The story opens with a man placing a band-aid on a child's knee and gently telling them that everything would be okay. The child's face lit up with gratitude as they thanked him. He reminded the child to be more careful while playing next time, and with a soft smile, they parted ways. We are then introduced to the main character, Mr. Apothecary. He wasn't there to treat anyone. Instead, he was searching for ingredients for his medicines. Someone recognized him and called out. It was the owner of the pawn bazaar. The man asked about his business and why he had come, but before waiting for a reply, he led the apothecary to a room, urging him to take a look at something. The shop owner explained that someone close to him had left behind a serious burden, and he had no clue how to handle it. His face showed clear concern. When he opened a door to another room, the apothecary's eyes widened at the horrifying sight before him. A girl lay there, barely alive, empty and lifeless. Her pointed ears were pierced multiple times, and her eyes looked dull, stripped of their natural shine. Deep scars and bruises on her body hinted at years of harsh torture. In a calm voice, the pawn owner explained that the elf had been used until she broke and was then thrown away. The apothecary stood frozen, while the man added that her body could still be used to craft expensive medicines. He pointed at her and told him to make a decision. The apothecary moved closer and channeled magic through his finger to examine her condition. Gangrene was spreading, and her fingers felt soft and decayed. Her fingernails had all been torn off during the torture. Slash and whip marks covered her body with lasting scars. Most of her teeth were missing, only a few in the back remained, and her left eye was gone. Her gaze was empty, showing no response. Wondering who could have done this, he softly asked if she could hear him. Her ear gave a faint tremble, showing that she could still hear slightly, even with the gaping holes in her ears. But the worst damage wasn't on the outside. It was the organs inside her body. He realized that the girl had likely suffered serious internal damage, and without immediate care, she wouldn't survive. While speaking in a low and despairing tone, she quietly whispered, "I want to go home," as a tear welled up in her eye. Filled with anger, the man struck the ground, thinking about how many times she must have begged for that one simple wish, only to be met with more cruelty. Her voice had probably gone unheard all that time, repeated endlessly. The pawn shop owner continued pressuring him, claiming he could sell her for less than the price of a cow or even a horse. "I don't want her dying in my shop. If you won't take her, I'll find someone else who will." He kept trying to persuade him, but the apothecary shouted that he would take her. He asked the owner for a backpack to carry her, which caught the man off guard. "You've lost your mind. You're seriously going to carry an almost dead elf across the mountain? Someone you don't even know?" Without responding, he gently covered her head with cloth and softly said that he meant no harm. "I will make sure to hold you firm." She didn't respond or react, completely silent. He wrapped her with the cloth and covered her up. She didn't move or resist. It was as if she had been treated like an object for so long that she no longer responded at all. He lifted her onto his back and began the long trek home. He tried to talk to her now and then, though she never answered. He thought to himself that soon it would be nightfall, and decided to make this place their rest stop at the top of the mountain. Gently, he approached her and mentioned that he would remove the cloth, but she kept softly repeating, "Home." He set his bag down and told her he was going to make some food. "Wait there." The girl sat quietly, her mind adrift in the wind. As the sun's golden light shone on her face, Alan, the apothecary, noticed a small change in her expression. It looked slightly better than when they had left the city. Maybe it was because elves had always lived close to forests since ancient times. As Alan prepared a meal, he ensured it was soft and thin, easy enough for her to swallow. Important, since she had almost no teeth left. The girl sniffed softly, curious about the unfamiliar smell near her. Alan gently scooped a small amount of food into a spoon and carefully brought it to her mouth, urging her to eat slowly. She opened her mouth and surprisingly managed to chew it well, which caught him off guard. As he continued feeding her in small bites, he asked if the food tasted okay. When she finished, Alan wiped her face clean, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. But later that night, her condition took a turn for the worse. She began breathing heavily and groaning in pain, her body drenched in sweat. Alan worked quickly to identify the cause and realized the infection in her arm was spreading rapidly and could soon impact her internal organs. He hurried to prepare a temporary remedy to ease her symptoms. He crushed ingredients with antibacterial and fever-reducing properties and brewed a decoction with elderflower and wild borage. To help it go down easier, he added ground magic stone, honey, and a pinch of salt. As he lifted her gently, he urged her not to give up, no matter how difficult things seemed, and silently wished the medicine would help. After swallowing it, she lay back down and slowly began to relax, whispering faintly, "Where?" As he placed a damp cloth on her forehead, Alan instantly understood what she meant. Patting her head, he assured her that they would go home soon. He told her it was okay to rest now. Gradually, she closed her eyes and drifted into sleep. Alan thought about what he had just said to her in front of the fire and wondered if his words had been too irresponsible. Though he truly wanted to help her return, deep down he feared that her suffering might have been caused by people of his kind. 8 years had passed since the 5 races began living peacefully after the war. Alan believed these races were gifted in their own ways, but not everyone shared his view. People like the pawnshop owner still existed, looking down on others simply for being different. Worse still, some didn't even see the other races as human. While lost in these thoughts, dark hands suddenly emerged from the ground, grabbing his legs. Alan stared at them with a blank expression, recognizing them as the faces of those he had killed. They clung to him, as if to haunt him forever. Slowly, Alan opened his eyes and saw that the sun had already risen. He muttered that it had only been a dream. When he turned toward the girl, her eyes were wide open, and a faint light flickered in them. He smiled gently and greeted her, letting her know he was about to lift her up. Even though Alan didn't know exactly how he could help her, he was determined to try. Her wish to return home had become his mission. The least he could do was care for her and try to bring her back to the way she once was. It would take time, effort, and patience. With a clenched fist, Alan looked at her and acknowledged that her wounds went deeper than just her body. But her heart had suffered too. "I don't know what kind of person you were," he said, gently taking her hand. "I'll give you a name that carries a wish. Resser. This name means I'll heal you no matter what, and you will be reborn. I promise." While her expression stayed the same, Alan quietly prepared some food and kept up their gentle little conversation. Resser didn't speak, only continued watching him with disbelief in her eyes. After a long, difficult journey, they finally arrived at their destination. Alan softly said, "This is going to be your new home where you will be living." Once inside, he carefully took off the cloth and helped her onto the sofa. In a faint, sad but hopeful voice, Resser whispered, "Home." A quiet, shy voice inside asked who it was. Alan introduced himself and explained that he needed some help. The door slowly opened, and a small, cheerful child peeked out, happily shouting, "It's the apothecary uncle!" With a playful pout, Moan asked if he had brought the sweets he had promised. Apologizing, Alan heard Moan's mother scolding her from behind. Her mother, a tall and attractive woman, apologized for her daughter's spoiled behavior, adding that he must be tired. Alan cut in, handing her a basket filled with food. Moan's mother seemed surprised, noting that it was rare for him to ask for help. Alan then explained he was looking for some clothes for Resser. She handed him some old garments, saying they were easy to repair if they tore. Alan gave a respectful bow and thanked her sincerely for the favor. Alan ran a hot bath for Resser. Steam drifted from the chimney as warm, soothing water poured into the tub. He gently removed her torn and worn-out clothes, making sure to keep her modesty with a cloth draped over her to avoid shocking her further. She remained motionless throughout, sitting in silence with a hollow, sorrowful look. When Alan saw her back, he froze. Her pale, slender body was covered in long, cruel whip marks from top to bottom. The wounds had never healed properly, leaving behind deep, permanent scars. The sight shook him to his core. As he washed her gently, his hands trembled, seeing the pain etched into her body. Scars that spoke of suffering and cruelty. Around her neck were deep bruises shaped like fingers, clear signs of choking. The cruelty she had endured made Alan's heart burn with fury. He silently wondered what kind of monster could have done such horrible things. Carefully removing the bandage from her infected arm, he struggled to keep his emotions in check. Once he steadied himself, he began treating her wounds one by one. Since unattended external wounds could grow worse over time, he applied herb-based ointments and used a special medicine from Korea to speed up healing. For the deeper injuries, he pressed cloth strips soaked in a thick slime fluid. This process would need to be repeated every 3 days. After finishing the treatment, he gently helped her stand and began dressing her. While sorting through the clothes, he found a woman's comb tucked in, likely added by Moan's mother, who had understood the situation without needing any explanation. As he dressed her and carefully combed her hair, he could see a softer, more peaceful person emerging, giving a glimpse of the girl she might have once been. With a quiet sigh of relief, Alan felt a small sense of progress. Then he remembered the food he had left waiting. He was exhausted and knew he needed sleep soon. As Alan was dressing her, he noticed she was trembling a bit too much. Her flustered expression caught him off guard. Worried, he quickly asked if she had a fever or if something was hurting, but then realized she probably just needed to use the toilet. He rushed off with her in his arms, surprised that she had shown no reaction while being undressed, yet was embarrassed by this moment. It struck him as oddly dignified. As he gently fed her afterward, he came to believe that her psychological awareness was still intact. Maybe regularly eating something warm and pleasant could slowly help her open up. That also meant he had to come up with a fix for her missing teeth, which could make a big difference. But a more serious problem still hung over them: her internal injuries. If things didn't improve, the only option might be amputation. He briefly thought about reaching out to a doctor he was familiar with. Later on, he carried her to her room and carefully laid her down. Her eyelids drooped with drowsiness, and she soon drifted off, looking as though she had finally found some peace after everything she had been through. Alan quietly hoped for something, anything that could heal her. The damage inside, the pain, the scars, the infection. Only a powerful healing potion could do all that, one capable of intense regeneration beyond normal medicine. With those thoughts weighing on his mind, he closed his eyes and wondered whether the stories of elves possessing mythical healing potions were really true, and he would try his best to make one. In the morning, Alan fed a letter crow some beans and tied a message to its back. As the bird flew off with the important letter, he turned to Resser and gently said, "Hold tight. I'll be out in the field." Alan wasn't just an apothecary, he also cultivated many of his own medicinal ingredients. This helped him save both him considerable effort and resources, especially given how far removed he was from the city. While he worked under the calm sky, a light breeze rolled across the field. Resser sat nearby, quietly breathing in the fresh scent of trees and earth. Tears welled in her eyes as she cried, "The smell of my home." Alan noticed her quiet sobs but didn't say anything. He simply kept tending to his field, silently respecting her pain. Later that morning, Moan suddenly appeared, barging through the door while wearing a small bag and casual clothes. "Oji-san," she called out playfully. Alan greeted her with a smile, only for her to quickly look past him. She wasn't there to see him. She was curious about his new patient. With a curious tone, Moan asked if she could talk to Resser. Alan agreed, thinking it might be good for Resser to interact with someone other than him. As Moan sat beside her, Alan turned his attention to another project. He had been thinking about Resser's teeth, and had decided to craft her a pair of dentures using notes from old texts. He planned to carve them from boar tusks. From across the room, Moan called out, "Why doesn't she talk? I've been speaking to her, but she doesn't answer." Alan paused and replied, "Maybe she's still trying to find a reason to speak." Even though she was young, Moan seemed to absorb his words deeply. A sudden idea sparked in her mind, and with a bright smile she exited out of the house. After a while, Moan called out loudly for Alan to look. When he turned, he saw Resser looking completely transformed. Wearing a crown, she looked both lovely and humble. With a gentle look, Alan told Moan, "You are very skilled, and it's very pretty." What surprised him was Moan's next comment. "Resser will be your bride, right?" Startled, Alan quickly waved his hands and said he was only there to help her recover. Nothing beyond that. Moan walked off playfully, smiling brightly. Alan quietly thought about how important these small moments could be for Resser's emotional healing. As part of her routine treatment, he applied eye drops to refresh her eyes, replaced the slime fluid-based cloth for her scars, and checked her heartbeat, which was still faint at times. He had also crafted a new set of teeth for her, carefully modeled after the ones she had lost. Once the dental procedure was done, he encouraged Resser to test her new teeth. With a smile behind his mask, he said, "Today we will celebrate your new teeth." Later, one of the local livestock farmers came by and handed Alan a large cut of meat, probably more than he had requested. As he cooked it, the sizzling sound and wonderful aroma enhanced the flavor. He had additionally marinated it in the tender part of a fruit liquor and made fine cuts so it would be easier to chew. Alan lifted a piece of steak and offered it to Resser. As she took a bite, drool trickled from her lips and her ears twitched. Smiling warmly, Alan continued feeding her smaller pieces, and with a soft sniffle, she kept eating without pause. Tears streamed steadily from her eyes. It felt like this was a moment she would treasure for the rest of her life. Alan smiled, and continued feeding her, saying, "Being able to eat makes you happy, Resser." Since that day, there had been subtle changes in her responsiveness, likely a promising sign. There was a chance she might soon express more emotions or even begin speaking. Her appetite had also noticeably improved. As Alan cheerfully said, "Today we will have bacon," he suddenly saw Resser cough up blood and collapse with a heavy thud. Her face went pale, and her body looked close to death. Rushing over, Alan lifted her and quickly tried to assess the problem. Strange marks had begun appearing, and her chest was turning a deep red. She began to have violent spasms, struggling to breathe, with bloodshot eyes that looked barely conscious. This wasn't any ordinary illness. It was clearly the effect of a potent neurotoxin from an obsidian spider. These spiders, despite their small size, were infamous for their deadly venom, used for assassinations since ancient times. As Resser writhed in pain, Alan became certain this had to be connected to her past. It was likely that her former master had poisoned her.